Last year's NAR settlement requiring a buyer agency agreement with compensation did you a favor. At least it did if you were one of the buyer agents providing real value to a transaction and not just leeching money from the transaction like a parasite with super access. For some of you, the settlement gave you a moment of panic because you realize you may be the parasite. My name is Levi Jones. I'm the founder and head coach at Guerilla Realty, and we want to help you begin to know and to prove the exact value you're bringing to the table for your clients. I'll show you how to make sure you're getting great deals for your buyers every single time. We did a private 1-hour live training on our favorite way to generate buyer leads, by the way, and we include the full step-by-step scripts and every tool you need to execute it on your own for free. To get it, just like this video, share it with another agent, and then comment shared below. I'll send you a private link to the full resource. To get a great deal as a buyer, you have to know the market better than anyone else involved in the transaction. We track real numbers, average days on market, typical markdowns, and pricing trends, so our buyers negotiate from a position of strength instead of just guessing based on the emotions of the moment. The first number that I track and know off the top of my head at all times is the average days on market. Imagine you walk into a scenario where a home's been sitting for a while. You know, if it's above the average days on market, that you have leverage in the negotiating process. This is going to help you get buyers a better deal, but you have to know this number. Not only is it going to help you with buyers, of course, it's going to help you set expectations correctly with sellers as well. And the truth is, most agents don't know their DOM. They're guessing. Or at best, they're looking up the number that's provided by the MLS. And let me tell you something, that's off, oftentimes by a factor of 3 or 4. And here's why I know that. The way that they calculate the DOM, your MLS, I mean, is they're calculating the DOM based on the homes that actually sold. But what about the homes that sat on the market for a little while and then got taken off? Or they sat on the market, got taken off and put back on by another agent? They don't account for those properties. And so the only real accurate way to calculate and know the actual accurate days on market for your area is to figure it out yourself. And the truth is, we've made it really easy. With this tool, you can access it at nerdsheets.com. But really, you only need to know 2 numbers: the number of homes sold in an area over a given period of time. Typically 3 months is what we want to use. And then the number of active listings. And the reason why those numbers are important is because we're actually going to calculate the absorption rate. And if you don't know what absorption is, it's how often the current inventory gets absorbed or gets turned over in a given time period. Okay? If you know that, if you know the absorption rate, then you know the average days on market for your area, or you can calculate the average days on market based on that absorption rate. So we know the absorption rate and the average days on market. No matter what market we're in, submarket, market segment, city, town, village in our area, because we actually look it up and calculate this number on a monthly basis. The second number that we look up and know without a shadow of a doubt, I'm not guessing, I have the numbers at my fingertips at all times, is I want to know the average markdown in a particular area. The truth is, not all cities, towns, villages within my local metro area are the same when it comes to negotiating power. And so when I'm working with a buyer in a particular area, I want to know exactly how much negotiating power or leverage I have as we begin to write and set an offer. And the truth is, I want to know this number before we even actually write the offer. I want to know this number as we're discussing it, even in the initial stages with my buyer. As we go in and show properties, I want to have this number at my fingertips at all times. And again, this is just like the average days on market. This is a number that I calculate every single month as part of our X Forecast playbook. I'll link to that above, a video we've done on the full X Forecast process above. But the truth is, in order to be a great buyer's agent and to provide value, you have to know your market inside and out. The final number that I look up and get every single month and that I use in my negotiations is the pricing trend. The pricing trend tells you any given market segment, which direction the arrow is pointing. Some are going to be pointing up. In other words, hey, it's still hot. Prices are going up. We need to be able to put in a competitive offer. Others are going down. And we can combine that with the knowledge we have about the average days on market to know exactly sort of the heat of the current market and what kind of leverage we have. The important part with all of these numbers is that we know our market. How much more confidence would you have in the number that you put on your offer sheet and the advice that you gave to your buyers as we begin to put in an offer if you actually knew the numbers because you've looked them up? You've actually done the homework prior to working with the buyer, prior to setting an offer or even showing the property. The amount of confidence it gives you to walk into a negotiation. And by the way, you're going to catch the seller agent off guard almost every single time because you're going to know the market and they're not. Before we write any offer, we run what we call a bulletproof CMA. This is a full statistical analysis using 50 data points and blows any other CMA out of the water. We don't guess our offer price. We justify it with real data. And I'll link to a video we did recently on the whole process, but let me give you a quick glimpse. What if you had a valuation method that you felt really confident in, that you were able to really base, hey, am I getting a good deal or not, around the value that you came up with? You would probably do that CMA, that valuation model, every single time you worked with a buyer. CMAs are not just for sellers. In fact, one of the best ways that we can provide value for our buyers is to do a CMA before we submit any offer. Now, our Bulletproof CMA is, like I said, a 50-point statistical analysis. It's unlike the typical traditional CMA method, is unscientific, not very reliable, generally speaking. And by the way, if you use RPR or Cloud CMA, you're just using the traditional CMA method. I'm not going to rehash that whole argument here, but I will link the Bulletproof CMA video we've done recently where we walk the dog on the whole thing. I'll link it above. But our Bulletproof CMA is based on 50 points, but 3 major factors. We're going to use the appreciation adjusted baseline value, and that's a lot of words to say something pretty simple. We're going to take a baseline value, and then we're going to adjust it based on the appreciation, because most of the time that baseline value isn't from yesterday. It might be from last year or 2 years ago. We want to adjust it forward using appreciation. We're also going to use the active comps in the area, and we want at least 11. How do we get 11? Well, we don't follow the traditional CMA where we draw a circle around our property and then we try to find exact matches. We're going to use something we call a broad match comparable. And then we're going to use closed comparables. And we need at least 36 of these. How the heck do you get 36 closed comparables? We're going to use the same broad match comparables, but we're going to not be afraid to go back 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, however far back we need in order to get the number of closed comparables. And I know some of you are already going, why would you go back 12 months? Those numbers aren't accurate. Well, why aren't they accurate? They're not accurate because of the appreciation of the market, right? Well, what would happen if we took some of those old listings, those old comparables, and we adjusted them forward using the average appreciation for the area? Now we have accurate valuations again, even going back in time some way. So we have a tool we built. It looks basically like this, and you can access it at bulletproofcma.com for free. So this is a tool that you can use. I wouldn't use it without checking out the video that we did on it, because that'll give you some guidance on how best to use the tool. There's a term in software we call GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You want to make sure you have the right data going in order to get the accurate valuation on the back end. Basically, it's going to lead you through entering in the property information, the adjusted baseline, the active comparables, the closed comparables, and it's going to dump you out at the end, which is a CMA report. Now, one of the things that we strongly believe in is this idea of a reasonable range of value. We actually don't believe in a single value. And in fact, that's not the way home prices work. You can't go on the stock exchange and look up what is the value of this property, 123 Main Street. Instead, what we know is there's typically a reasonable range. In other words, anywhere within this reasonable range, we could feel comfortable putting in an offer and we're not getting our buyer screwed, right? However, if we were on the low end of this reasonable range, if we were to lowball them, probably the seller might get a little bit offended, and we would be, but I should say not and, but we would be getting our buyer a stellar deal. If we offered above the high end of the reasonable range, most likely our buyer would not be getting a good deal, and we could justify that with the numbers. So this is going to give us a lot of guidance, and we're going to be able to factor this in to, hey, are we competing against other offers? What kind of concessions are we asking for, et cetera? And so we can be confident when we submit an offer that as long as we're within that reasonable range of value, it's an appropriate offer. And it also, by the way, prevents you when there's a feeding frenzy like there was a couple of years ago where people were going 10, 20, 30K over asking price. You can reasonably advise your buyers, hey, we can submit an offer like that. However, this is the valuation that I've done. You don't have to guess. We don't have to go based off of the seller's price, and the list price and what they've come up with. And by the way, when you're submitting the offer, if it's off, if it's lower than the listing price and you're afraid of how they might view it, you can justify it and you could actually say, look, this is the valuation I came up with. Tell me why I'm wrong. They'll either be able to justify it or they won't. Either way, it gives you more information. More information means more leverage in the negotiation. Anyone can say they negotiate well, but we actually track it. We use a Buyer Savings Scorecard to show our real track record, how much money we save clients, the concessions we negotiate, and how often we secure below market deals. It's proof that the system works. The last piece of the puzzle is our savings scorecard. This is the same type of scorecard that we keep track of for our sellers. We know exactly how much money we're netting them, how it compares to what the market does. We also know how quickly we can sell a house. Just like we do with sellers, we want to be able to justify our value for buyers as well. Not just justify, but explain it with data. And it takes just a couple of minutes to actually just enter in your recent sales, the list price, the close price, which is going to give you what you achieved in terms of a markdown. You can compare it with the average markdown for the market, and you can see, hey, am I at least getting average markdown? Am I getting less than markdown? But we also know that markdown is not telling the whole story, because you may have a higher close price, but you're getting huge, massive concessions in the way of the seller's paying buyer closing costs, doing repairs, et cetera, et cetera. And so we want to include the concessions as well as we track the savings. And that's the bottom dollar. We want to know exactly how much we save our buyers compared to the market average. And so this savings calculator is going to help you do that. Again, you only have to put in a couple of numbers there. The last thing that I always like to track is I want to make sure I'm getting a 5-star review with every single one of my buyers. And so the savings scorecard just helps keep me accountable to make sure I'm collecting a review for each and every one. We use a tool called TrustBuff that we've built. It's completely free. That's how we collect our 5-star reviews. In fact, I'll link to a video that we've done on TrustBuff above, but this is the savings scorecard. And if you combine all of these, knowing our numbers, having accurate valuations that we can rely on, and then tracking our results, you have absolute value that you're providing in every single transaction. Plenty of people think buyer agency may be on its way out, but here is a universal truth in business. Over the long term, every person will be adequately compensated for the value that they provide. And that's true of buyer agents too. But you need to be sure you're providing value, that you are getting your buyer bottom dollar. Remember, we did a full hour-long training on our favorite buyer lead generation method. We average over 80 leads every single month with the strategy. And during the training, we provide copy and paste ads, scripts, and all the tools you need to execute it for free. All we ask is that you please like the video, share it with a friend, and then comment below that you did. Once you've done that, I'll send you a private link to that training. Thanks. We'll see you soon.